Welcome to the second episode of The Alia Show. The agenda, an exploratory search for the truth. Today, our esteemed guest is Katrin Naumann, an intuitive healer, author, and good friend. Let's bring her in. Hello, Katrin.
Hello, Alia. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us today. We're clearly super excited to have you on.
Well, it's a thrill for me.
It's an exalted pleasure over on our side. So we are so excited to dig into and jump into some really interesting topics today, including your book, which is amazing.
Spiritual Teachings for the Awakening Consciousness.
Exactly. If anybody's looking for like an A to Z just overview of anything and everything, I won't say everything because there's always more, but just so many of the metaphysical topics, if you will. This is just enough about each of them, from astrology to tarot to philosophy of the self to a little bit of religions and the origins and how everything ties in together. This is literally a book I have been waiting my life to have, and I can't recommend it enough. Just sitting with it gives me joy.
Well, thank you.
And some chakra activations. Here, tell us a little bit how the book came about.
Well, it's a project that I've been working on with David Harry Davis for 11 years.
Wow.
Although David was the owner of Seven Rays Bookstore in Syracuse, which is a metaphysical mecca, you might say. And he ran that for 30 years, and he taught many metaphysical classes on the Kabbalah and the Tarot and astrology, and he wanted to bring the teachings that he has been working with for, lifetimes into one volume. And I had been studying with him Tarot and astrology for a number of years, and I sort of volunteered as because I have experience with writing, and it first started off with me just designing a deck of 22 cards, the major arcana that we focus on in the book, and then I began to edit some of the work, and then the more I worked on it, I became a contributing editor, and then I became a co-author. So I kept adding more of my personal experience to the writings, and so then it was but it sounds
like you were the scribe in a certain way.
Lifetimes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, eliminated manuscripts, I think, is definitely, because I have a strong affinity for those works, and just the beauty of them, and the calligraphy and whatnot.
Me too.
So,
anytime I hear a mention, even still, of like the Alexandria Library burning, I have such a strong emotional reaction to that because of all of the texts, texts full of wisdom from like Lemuria and Atlantis and the Sumerians, and just a lot of light key codes that existed, I believe, in those treasures that either burned down in that fire, or I've heard theories that if that was a psyop, and that those pieces of literature were actually moved, and just to give the illusion that they were gone, but that they might still exist somewhere.
Well, they do exist. They exist in the collective consciousness. They exist in the Akashic, but they also exist in the Tarot.
Huh.
And so it is said that as the library was burning, that some of those who held that wisdom were creating the cards at that time. We go through an alchemical transformation. You know, like each time I was working on those cards, first just drawing them, then inking them, and then painting them. Each cycle, it was the energies that are represented in the cards were manifesting for me in my life experience. So it can be a very powerful transformative tool. I mean, and the book is too, because 10 Gates into the Garden, because the cards are there and you're, as a reader, looking at them and contemplating them and you know, making associations for how they're relevant in your own life. And what we focus on is what we manifest and what we create and what we draw to us. So the more we focus on the cards as a point of, you know, meditation or contemplation, those energies become activated within us, because they're all archetypal. They exist within us anyway. So it's just bringing them to the surface.
So we have to go through all of them, from the Fool to the World?
And we call it the Cosmos card.
Mm-hmm.
But just because the world is more limited, Cosmos includes everything. And at that point, you know, when we get to that level of awakening and understanding, we are at the place of God consciousness, and then we begin again with the Fool, which is this, you know, that spark of divinity descending into the material. It's just before the descent into the material plane, and the cycle starts all over again. So,
but are you at a higher level since you've completed the cycle? I pulled the Fool today.
Me personally, you mean?
Anyone?
Like,
well, I pulled the Fool.
I mean, it works. It's like layers, you know. I mean, it's each time you go through, like, depending on what you're ready to release or clear or bring in, that is what you experience. And with, yes, each time you know, go through them, yeah, it's going to raise the vibration, it's going to expand the consciousness. So yes, there will be an upliftment or just
transmutation.
Yes, it's transmutation of energy.
The processes that you're describing is transmutation. The uplifting, what's that called? Ascending?
You can say the ascension. I mean, some people refer to the ascension as like when we actually like leave our physical body and our just the light body, and that ascends, you know, it merges back into the whole, or to source. But that's, you know, Jesus ascended, Mary ascended, right? And I mean, other beings have ascended as well, but it's typically, typically the ascension occurs when there isn't the need to come back again.
So you become an ascended master, or is that not an automatic title that you get after ascension? Well,
you know, because there may still be some work to do on the other side before you know, because we have this, it's as above, so below, right? So we should be, are we recording this? Oh, okay.
That was my number one, like, lesson as a producer, is just hit record. Just hit record. And that's when the gems come forth. You know, don't clearly respect the ethics of, like, never filming anybody when they're not aware, or when you know that they're not gonna like it. Yeah. But that's always the, like, the goal.
The juiciness is there. So as above, so below. And so we're here in the material plane. This is, you know, the school, right, of the physical reality.
Our knocks. Oh my God.
Not necessarily for everyone, but certainly for, you know, at least for periods of our lives, we might experience that. And so when when we incarnate, we come for a purpose, for a reason, and it's really not so much like, oh, am I going to be a teacher or a musician or whatever. It's how am I going to balance this energy that I've set into motion through other lifetimes, that we would call karma, and then certain spiritual lessons that we're meant to learn here. And so when we have incarnated enough times, if you will, so that we have balanced all that out, then the ascension occurs. And we can have enlightenment, like the Buddha, right, achieved enlightenment, and that was, enlightenment is always immediate, but it happens when we get to a place where we're ready and we're available to receive the understanding that is, the God consciousness. And Jesus, we know of him having had this particular lifetime when he lived in our history, but he was preparing for lifetime after lifetime, or prior to his most recent that we're aware of, and that's been documented. And he at his baptism received the consciousness that we call the Christ, right? The Christ consciousness he received at his baptism, not at his birth. Like, he had stuff to do. He had stuff to figure out and clean up and work to do before he got to that place where...
How old was he when he was baptized?
I'm not a scholar.
So I
think
I didn't know that it was like later in life.
I think his mission was really only like 3 years or something like that. It wasn't a very long time. But he also, like, the years that nobody seems to know where he went or what he was doing. I mean, there's a lot of conjecture, I guess, and some people say there's if you look at sacred texts in the monasteries in Tibet and in India, in the Himalayas, that's where he was. He was studying with the masters. There's a really great book called it's gonna escape me right now, but it's something of the Masters of the Far East by I have it in my bookshelf. It's just the name is escaping me right now. But
that's a great title, whatever it is that you're going towards.
Yes. Anyway, it'll come when I'm not trying to think of it. So anyway, even Jesus, who, most we've been taught to believe, like, came in as the Christ, he received that consciousness at his baptism. And then he, then his sort of mission, if you will, began, which was to teach us that we all have the same potential.
We're all divine.
Yes, and to be and to embrace and to embody that Christ consciousness. And there have been Christed beings before. Krishna means Christ, so there are, a bunch of books about I'm just blanking with titles right now, but there's one that's like the 12 masters of, that were messiahs before Jesus. Zoroaster and, just many. So, and, of course, Buddha.
Why are they all men?
Well, Kuan Yin. I mean,
yes.
Look at
Isis, Kuan Yin, Hathor. Have you heard of the Sophia Code? Sorry to interrupt.
It's fine. I have heard of it, but not, Mary Magdalene, she was like pushed to the side. And
this is all in the Sophia Code.
Gave me a book called Mary Magdalene Revealed, and I haven't yet started it because I have a stack of, several others that are in.
I want to dive into Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
I really learned about her last month when it was Mary Magdalene Day, and the Catholic Church decided, 3 years ago, that Mary Magdalene should have a day. And it was so interesting because I was in the basement at the computer reading about her, and then it said something about how she was worshipped underground, and I was just like, wow, this is so interesting. And just the rose, the intertwining of the rose, there's something with the rose and a sisterhood that's kind of been like, almost like it's there, but it's not like, there's no name for it. It's just been like wisdom and pool of knowledge that I feel is within enlightened women of maybe certain bloodlines who, I know there were like lots of, not lots, but a good amount of secret societies that women were a part of, and where the rose was the center of gravity in the education of what life is and what we are. And I don't know, I just contemplated all of that recently, and even like looked at the rose, and people just usually appreciate the top flower, but I began to like appreciate the thorns and even the leaves, and just how the frequency of the rose, they say, is one of the highest of, I don't know if it's flowers or plants included, but that wisdom comes in with the rose. I've had downloads that I know have come in because roses are literally physically in front of me. And Mary Magdalene very much to bring it back.
And the rose is also associated with Jesus' mother Mary, because of the pain and the suffering that she endured witnessing her son's, execution. And so that, those two women were very closely associated. And you might see them as like the high priestess and the empress, right? Mm-hmm. Those, the dual, the loud motorcycles going past my house. So the dual feminine in the tarot is the high priestess and the empress. And so the high priestess is this quote unquote virginal subconscious, and the high priestess, or rather the empress, is the creative subconscious. So so you have the virginal, which is like before the seed is planted, the seed of our idea, the seed of what we intend to create.
The soil.
I beg your pardon?
The soil.
Yes, exactly. And the salt is an element that is associated with the high priestess, and that represents the earth, the salt of the earth, right? Oh. So the subconscious is like soil. We plant a seed in it and it accepts it, right? The subconscious mind does not discriminate, and it doesn't differentiate. It's very literal. So that's why it's really important when we want to manifest something, that we speak to what we want rather than what we don't want, because the subconscious doesn't hear, oh, I don't want this. It just hears it picks up on the energy, the vibration of the what it is that we're speaking about. So what is it that has the highest like emotional charge? I don't want to lose my job, well, the I don't want part is sort of like not really vibrating at any sort of major frequency compared to lose my job. Like that's where the fear comes in, right? So that's where the energy is mostly concentrated, and that's what the subconscious is picking up on. And it's like, oh, lose job, lose job, lose job. And that's why they say we manifest what we fear, because it's what we're focusing on. Look at the fear that's happening in our society presently, and fear begets fear, and it feeds on itself. But love and kindness are equally as contagious, you could say. It all just depends on what we're focusing on. So, so Mary Magdalene, as the creative subconscious, you know, she has been depicted as, you know, as a woman of the world and a prostitute or whatever, but because she had the power that she had, it you know, the patriarchy was, you know, threatened by that, wanted to you know, diminish the import of the connection between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and it had to sort of disempower Mary, the mother, right? And so that the those who were in power could use and you know, to create the story in a way that would serve their needs the best. And
that's really nicely put, Katrin. I would have had some choice words in those sentences, but you're right, and I'm learning very much from you to watch my words, because sometimes it could be just a matter of like not even like the and thing. Like you've taught me to remove but, because but is like such a like stop to whatever the flow of the intention is, and almost like a rerouting, but like no direction. But as opposed to and, which we've talked about, is very similar to how actors and what are they called?
Yes and is like the first, you know, tenet of improvisational theater. And because you accept what's offered and then you add to it. And we are in a co-creative experience with source energy, right? And so if source is offering me something and I'm saying no, then everything comes to full stop, and there's no creative flow as a result of my, and it's always comes down to fear. I mean, if you've explored you know, I think we've both done some improvisational theater before, and I know for myself, you know, fear was the hugest hurdle for me to get over, particularly because I was working with people who were very well versed in that form, and I was just like, oh my God, these people are amazing, and what do I have to say? And you know,
so you feel like you really learn yourself in those moments, because it's like whatever your brain like comes up with, you have to let it shoot out, zero filter, and it's like raw you in front of people. Whereas with acting, that's more of like a hiding of the stuff.
Right? You have the script, you have the character. And I mean, yes, their characters are created in improv, but when you're doing theater games, you know.
Oh my goodness. I even just sitting without being in a character and playing some of those games is taxing. They're like confusing, and you're like literally trying to keep up with, oh, that person said that their, you know, object was X, and that one person is Danny, and this, and it's just flying back and forth, and then it comes to you, and you're just like, and in that exercise, I feel as though it helped me connect to my higher self easier and source, because it kind of just broke and chipped away at all of the other stuff that gets in the way, mainly the ego and the fear.
Sure. Well, and when with improv, you know, a lot of times if you're doing a scene with somebody, or even just a game, you know, going around in a circle, and you know, like, have you ever played this is not a stick? It's, you know, and then you have to say, oh, it's a, you know, I'm in a gondola in Italy, and I'm punting, you know, through the canals, and and what can happen is, you know, it's going around and it's coming to you, and it's like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Well, that person already stole my idea. And we get so caught up, and we're not really fully present. And so we're thinking about what we're going to say, what might be funny, and we take ourselves out of the moment. And so it's very Zen in a way of just, you know, when we're really in it, that in that flow, and it's the creative flow. And when we're riding the wave, and we surrender, and we just allow ourselves to be present, and without censoring, as you said, we just let it out. And, you know, and for some it can be like one of my teachers, Gary Izzo, he's brilliant. He, when we would, you know, do these games, very often he would pause and, you know, he'd be like, okay, that was all well and good, but let's see if we can work to the top of our intelligence, you know, because a lot of times, you know, the scatological kind of potty humor comes out but it's just like, that's what's there, what's easy, and maybe it's going to get a laugh if that's what, you know, people are aiming for, and typically
you're right, as opposed to like a tad bit more time to mentally prepare, even if it is a second. You can go to a higher intelligence, reach for more, and kind of present something a little bit better.
It just uplifts, you know, and it broadens perhaps too the potential for what's available. And you know, and it has to do with we are creatures of habit typically, and we go to what's easy and what we know, and if that's what's worked for us in the past, then that might be kind of the lane that we stay in. And if we want to expand, we're going to have to move outside of our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And you know, and that's how we grow in life is coming up against some limitation that we you know, first we have to become conscious that it's there, and then we have to say, okay, I'm willing to transcend this limitation, and it's likely going to be a challenge for my ego, because the ego wants us to stay in a malleable place where the ego can maintain control. And when we start to work toward the top of our intelligence, you might say, we're moving in the direction of the soul. And what the soul would have, you know, has intended for us. And when we start to move, you know, raise our vibration, then, you know, I call them the minions of the ego start to pop up.
Oh
right.
My goodness.
Fear and doubt and uncertainty and all these things start to present themselves, so that we stop. That's where the but comes in. Oh, I'd love to do this, but. And
so can I stop you right there? I have a question.
Yeah.
So basically you're describing how to do shadow work, right?
Yeah, it's looking at those parts of ourselves that we are that we have disowned, you could say, that are typically we're unaware of, that have it's our unconscious belief structures that have the greatest power in terms of motivating us to make the choices that we do in our lives. And you know, until we are conscious of what we don't know, our life feels like it's out of our control. We feel like we're at the mercy of things that are beyond our control, and it's terrifying. It certainly can be. And
you're describing consciously looking at that, as opposed to just going along for the ride. Shadow work is being able to first identify it, I think, right? And then you almost described it, and I could be wrong, but to expect a little bit of turbulence.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so when you're kind of conscious and you know, like, shit's gonna go awry for a minute, but I need to deal with this because it's been something, you know, in a shelf on a closet, and, you know, where all the skeletons live.
Exactly.
But when you look at it, and then, so identify, look at it, go through the pain. Like if it's tears, anger, what have you, let it come up, let it come up, let it come up. Sit outside, let the earth help you transmute it, let it come up, but then heal it. So can you tell us a little bit about how to heal those little, you love it, right?
Yes, healing occurs when there's a transmutation of energy. right? And everything is energy. Emotions are energy in motion. And when we repress or suppress or just for
Deny.
in whatever way, yes, deny in whatever way we do, these aspects of ourselves, and it's typically parts of ourselves that we deem, and it's likely because, you know, our parents have said so or society says so, it's typically parts of ourselves that we deem inappropriate or unacceptable. And
is it true that those ideologies are sometimes programmed into us, sometimes accidentally, in our childhood years? I mean, I feel as though that's mainly what I've been coming across when I read about shadow work, is to like literally go back to the beginning, to your childhood, meditate, find your inner child, connect with him or her, start there. Or them. You're right.
Well, yes, and there's more. So when we go back to our youth, you know, and as early as we can remember, and certainly there's, you know, hypnosis and things like that that can help us to go even farther back. If it's in utero, even, we can have trauma, right? So, and our family of origin, and then, you know, if we're adopted, that family is embraced in this as well. We choose as a soul before we incarnate. We approach other souls and we say, I need to work on this, this, and this for this lifetime. Will you be my mother? Will you be my father? And those souls have to agree, or they pass, you know, no, that's not really in alignment with what I need to work on. There's always an even exchange of energy that is required for someone, a soul, to say, yes, I will serve you in this way. And that might be as, quote unquote, our tormentor, right? But we've selected that soul because, and they've accepted, because there is a balance of energy that can occur. It's not to say it necessarily will, but the potential is there because we have free will, right? Mm-hmm. So the potential is there for this balancing out of whatever the energy is that each soul needs to attend to. And so the thing about that is so in our early life, you know, well, let's just say everything that we're experiencing around us is a mirror for what is happening within us in terms of what is it that we believe about ourselves. And this is where, you know, the awareness could be overshadowed in terms of, you know, repressed emotions and experiences, and even, so when we incarnate and we have this experience in our early life, may be traumatic, may not, but if we're what ultimately allows the healing to occur, yes, we have to look and see what's there and what our experience has been and how we've pushed that away and denied it. And yes, we have to learn how to embrace it. But it's really hard for people often to embrace that because, again, they feel that they're at the mercy, they're the victim, they're at the mercy of things beyond their control. And
so the more you connect to yourself,
to me.
Copy. So the more you connect to your higher self, and your higher self reminds you, you signed up for this.
Exactly.
It's that moment in this plane where we recognize, oh, this person's here to teach me this, and they trigger me in this way. And why?
Yes, it could be that I need to learn forgiveness, right? And And so I experienced some trauma in my early life where somebody perpetrates something, and I am the recipient of whatever that is. And it could be that my soul has asked for this experience because I need to learn how to forgive. And the only way that I'm going to ultimately heal is through that act of forgiveness. And it's not condoning the behavior, it's just releasing myself from the energy of being connected to this individual, this soul, ultimately.
So attachment.
Yes, it's an entanglement that occurs, that an energetic entanglement that needs releasing, and so that I can reclaim my soul's autonomy, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And so our healing work always has to do with, let me just say this, getting back to the shadow, concept of the shadow. If I'm a child and I'm in my bedroom and it's dark and I'm looking in the closet and it looks like there's monsters in there, right? And it's, my parent comes in and they're like, oh, let's turn on the light and see, oh, it's just your clothes there hanging in the closet, right? It's the light that transforms the shadow, that transforms the fear and so our shadow work always has to do with bringing light into.
So you look at it with literally a truth light. You look at your shit and you figure out where the lessons are, and so when you figure out where the lessons are, and sometimes, like you said, it's forgiveness. Could you possibly come into a life and have a really tough life because you signed up for it to pay off karma for past life that you may not have been as good of a person in? Do some people sign up for that?
I'm sorry, I kind of missed the last few words there, so repeat that, please.
Do some people sign up for a life where the karma is really tough, like they're just burning off a lot?
Yes.
As a result of a deal they made in the in-between space with their at the conference room table.
It's always with ourselves. It's never with anyone else.
Oh, so
the deal we're making
the archangels and such whole
space.
They
serve as guides. They serve as guides, but they're not judging us. They're not saying you must do this. They might say we recommend. It might be, in your best interest to choose to deal with these various things. But again, we have free will. We get to choose. So whatever and they say, God never gives us more than we can handle. Well, we are God, right? So we never give ourselves as souls more than we can handle in any given lifetime. And again, though, we have free will. We can choose to rise to the occasion, raise our consciousness, raise our vibration. That's rising to the occasion. Or we can stay in this experience of victim mentality and powerlessness and despair, or whatever the attendant emotions are that we are experiencing. And
feel the feelings, feel them, but don't linger there. Don't live. Like if you're depressed and you're sad and you want to sit in bed and cry for a day, do that.
Right,
but
also through, as they say, right? The only way out is through. There's a Mark Nepo is an author, wrote the Book of Awakening. It's been on the Oprah book list or whatever. Very popular book, Daily Meditations, and he speaks to a story where he talks. I might ask you the question: where is the safest place to be in a forest fire? What would you say might be the safest place to be in a forest fire?
On the outskirts. If you had to be in the fire, I would want to be on the outskirts so I can
Okay, yes. However, if this is the fire and this is me, and I'm like out here, right? The fire can still come and consume me, right? But if I go into the fire and through it, then I'm on the other side where it's already burned.
Wow.
And it looks very bleak, perhaps there. Everything looks dead. However, from the ash, the phoenix rises from the ash, right? So from the ash serves as the fodder for new growth. So when we go into the fire, which is looking within. I mean, that's why so many people are afraid to meditate or to be still, because it's like all our stuff starts to come up.
Yeah.
But that's the work. That's what we're here to do, is to look at what am I afraid of? What do I keep running from? I can't run from my fear. It will always follow me. And we can't run from our fate. And our fate is really just what we've created, right? What we've put into play in other lifetimes that we call karma. It's the law of cause and effect. And it's physics. It's not a moral thing. It's not like you're bad. You did this, so you're going to get this.
It's literally physics and science, and
it's physics. It's every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So when we can how do I say this? Like step into a place of non-attachment. It's like, I was going to say disassociate, but people like disassociate from their emotions, and we don't want to do that, or their experience. But we want to step into this place of the witness self, right? Where we can observe the experience without getting caught up in the story that we keep telling ourselves, which is I'm the victim, or whatever it might be, and that just perpetuates our sense of disempowerment. And we taking responsibility for our experience. And this is where it can get really challenging, because if, let's say, for example, I was abused or raped or oppressed in some way, like, firstly you might say, well, why would I even want that? Why would I ask for that? And but again, if we're talking karma, it's because I behaved in a very similar way, maybe not exact, but because karma has more to do with intention, what lies behind, like the motivation for the act, more so than the act itself.
Because that's where the energy lies. That's
exactly
where the output of energy from that person is were you being deceitful, were you being helpful? Those are two different vibrations that you will experience as boomerang right back to you. So
right. Well, and look at the example, let's say, of like a car accident. Let's say, I'm driving, it's slippery out, it's it's snowing, and I hit a pedestrian or somebody on a bike or whatever. It was not my intention to hit them. The energy went out. That's going to come back at some point, but it's going to be at a level that's, for lack of a better term, the punishment meets the crime. And I don't want to say, because as I just said, I'll have to find better language for that. But the nature of the energy that went out is what comes back, and based on the intention. But if I intentionally run into a group of protesters and mow them down,
or we're driving under the influence, made some decisions that were selfish,
that's even a different, that would be a different thing, because it's it's not premeditated in that sense, as you're driving into a group of protesters. So it's certainly different than it's just snowing out and I'm completely at the mercy of the elements, let's just say. But yes, so the energy of the intention is really what's most key in terms of how we experience it coming back. But sort of to get back to your question, because I think I totally went off, about, you know, do we come in perhaps with a lot of karma to, you might say, burn off, right? And we may, and our life may be.
Just being alive right now is, we all chose to be here.
We all chose to be here at this time.
And we all chose to accept the transmutation process that we're all currently in, subconsciously or consciously. It's happening through us. The earth is transmuting, we're transmuting, more light is coming into earth. It's causing people's densities, aka their shadows, to really come up.
Yes, that's
because
what
like you said, it's the shining of the light. And for those, I think, that don't do the work and suppress it, end up usually either on accident or semi-conscious of it, hurting the people around them.
And themselves.
And themselves ultimately.
Yes, certainly. The soul is always attempting to invite us to grow, to expand, to become more of the fullness of who we truly are. You know, who we've just forgotten that we are, because we're all God, right? So, and we've forgotten that. We've been trained away from that awareness and that understanding, conditioned, you know, in some cases consciously, or some cases by default, just because, you know, my parents learned from their parents, and their parents learned from their parents, and like, how far back can we go? Like, it goes, you know,
as well as going through, whether it be the church, mosque, synagogue, a place of worship, a person, a priest, someone that can connect me to the divine, is not as necessary as I think we have been indoctrinated with, based off of the fact that it's really to go inward.
Yes, that's
not that any of that stuff doesn't help, and if we concentrate on how we can use it to go inward, all spirituality is to go inward and up.
Yes, and any religion may be used as a tool toward this this awakening, this spiritual awakening, this reclamation of the self, the higher self. And however, many people have, for many people, it has become a crutch, or you know, something that they rely on, and maybe aren't really necessarily practicing what their tradition, you know, espouses at its you know, highest expression. And because our experience is always a reflection of the inner, that's where the change, and the only place the change can occur. You know, so many of us are trying to fix everything outside of ourselves, and we exhaust ourselves in doing so, because once we think we've got it just so, it's going to change, because it's material, and material things shift and change and dissolve and regenerate. And so when we put our trust, our faith in the material realm as what's secure and stable, you know, like in our country, every, you know, 4 years we have an election, and sometimes it's even, you know, more frequently, depending. And so, like, if we rely on a party or a person in charge to, you know, to be what we hang on to for our sense of stability and security, we'll always be living in some degree of fear, because it could fall away at any moment. You know, the next election, somebody new could come in, and, or, you know, I'm using that as an example, but it you know, people are always talking about, oh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, things are going too well right now. You know, I'm just waiting for something bad to happen, right? And it's because we're looking at what's out here as what keeps us feeling secure. But when we redirect our focus and we recognize that the illumination, the light, which is the constant, it doesn't go away, it's always there. Or even when the clouds come and pass in front of the sun is still shining. Even when it appears to be night in, you know, the northern hemisphere, in the, you know, North America, it's daylight somewhere else. And even if it's winter here, it's summer, you know, in the other hemisphere. So we only see part of this very complex whole, and we label it as the truth or reality, and that's where we get into trouble, because we only have, you know, a very small window through which we're looking, and there's so much more available to us, and so we get, you know, we hem ourselves in with our limiting thoughts and beliefs, and you know, one of which is we die. Yes, the physical form falls away, we drop the body, but that which we are is eternal. And that's what, you know, the whole concept of eternal life is. It's coming to that awareness that the physical form, it's just a package that I happen to be inhabiting for this span of this lifetime, whatever that may be, which I choose. I choose when I come in and how. I choose when I leave and how. You know, as a soul, the conscious mind doesn't know that necessarily, unless, you know, we're really doing the work and we get to that place where eventually the fear of death falls away, because we know, and then we can actually truly live. And that's what, you know, that's what being born again means, right? Is dying to the beliefs that are limiting.
The ego self, and then stepping
yes, exactly.
the door.
You know, we don't want to kill the ego, though. The ego
is more of like our friend that is constantly trying to protect us. And I learned to, in those moments, to say, thank you, ego, I got this. I know that you're trying to protect me based off of, you know, something that happened in the past, but I got this, you can ease up. And just speaking directly to the ego sometimes helps. And also, this is why you go and book a session with Katrin, because she helps you look at that and go through that. I mean, we were going to do a Qigong session my first time seeing you, and it just turned into a portal opening where we just explored, and you offered the correct mirror, and you offered the ability. A good healer allows somebody to just heal themselves, guides them there, holds space, allows for the room for the transformation.